as we prepared for this storm 2 days in advance, it was just another hurricane that here at Singing River Electric our employees have become accustomed to. As we approached closer to the day of the storm, the feel changed. Emotions became a little higher. During the storm, many of our employees experienced water to a degree we've never experienced before. Many ended up waist deep or even higher in water in efforts to rescue those around them. Some of our employees even had trouble finding some of their family and neighbors. As a matter of fact, one of our employees actually lost his father. During those trying times, the day after the storm, our employees certainly surprised me by showing up. Not only showing up, but showing up with those efforts that they are accustomed to being the same effort level, and that they immediately went to work and had the drive to bring some sense of normalcy back to our communities that we serve. Even with homes that had been damaged, flooded, or even family members that they were still trying to contact. That says a lot about the Singing River family. As a matter of fact, probably the proudest time as an employee of Singing River Electric that I've ever experienced. And it was the largest natural disaster to hit the United States. I know after a day or two, we ended up with over 1,000 employees here working, which was challenging in itself. As a result, 10 days later, all power was restored to meters that could take power.
We were staying at the Lucille office because they wouldn't let us stay at the Gaucher office because it was a category 4 or 5, whatever the policy was at the time. And I remember the storm hit that Monday morning, 7 o'clock maybe, 2 o'clock Monday afternoon. Ace comes by and gets me and says, "Let's go." We headed south. So cut our way out of the Lucille office and going down south to the office. Come across I-10, the water was still up level with the bridge on I-10. It's unlike anything I'd ever seen. So we get to Highway 90, and there's a boat sitting in the middle of Highway 90 in the median right in front of the Dodge store. Then we get to the office, and the debris had knocked the gate over. So we had to drag the gate out of the way to get in the yard. So we got in the yard and checked the office out pretty good to make sure there wasn't any water. Got in, and no water got in the office, so we were pretty pleased with that. It's strange. I know that Friday, so I was over the underground at the time, and that Friday there were 4 or 5 services that I told the guys, is, look, we need to get these run before the storm comes in next week. And I think all 4 or 5 of those houses got destroyed in Katrina after we got them run. We ran them Friday and they were gone Monday evening. But at Porto Bay was devastated. You could just see streets and streets over where, there was nothing there, just piles of rubble. Houses were gone. There's houses that had washed up in the middle of the road, down off Lemoyne, down there. Working with Glenn over there was a trip. That was a trip. We would get lights on after a week or so of not being able to, and he'd say, "Let's make a victory lap." He'd get in the back of my truck and we'd ride through the subdivision and listen to everybody cheer. And he'd tell them, "Turn the lights on, we need some damn money," That was Glenn. But he, had to make a victory lap every time you got a subdivision on. Thursday night that week, I think we got a call about 11 o'clock and power comes ready to energize transmission. So we're gonna heat the Ocean Springs Hospital up. It's gonna be the first lights to come on. And Ace come in there, wondering who wanted to go. And so me and Brian Huey and Wayne Milam, and maybe 1 or 2 more, went down there and they heat up transmission to the sub. And we tried to energize the substations. And when he would energize it, the whole substation would glow blue, all the corona on it. It would it'd drop out. We'd re-energize again and it would glow, drop out. We had to burn all the corona off everything. And it finally, about 3rd or 4th time, it finally held. And we were to the hospital and make sure the lights came on, and they did.
Katrina left a very much impact on everyone. It's a storm you'll never forget. I had worked a few minor storms, but never one like this. After Katrina passed and I knew I could get here safe, hopefully safe, I came in, the landlines were down, cell towers were down. When I would answer the phone call, they would, obviously it was about restoring their power, but I had to be a listening ear as well. And I am a compassionate person. And just listening to them, and I'm not going to go into details, but it was major. And I felt like, just listening and turning the situation around and just trying to bring them hope. And there was elderly people calling in that didn't have anyone, and I would listen, and they needed a meter pole up. So I come in contact with a very nice gentleman, and he would go and he would set up their meter pole and not charge them, too much. And just them calling and just showing gratitude, that was the turning point for me. Obviously, restoring power, but hearing gratitude in their voices just change. And again, just the hope, because hope means something good is possible, and I was trying to make it possible.
It was a little difficult. We were in the north part of Gaucher, and when we realized we couldn't get out of where we were, it took us about 8 hours to cut our way out to start assessing the amount of poles and damage that we had just in North Gaucher. Left there, tried to check on my house. I had a 6-month-old baby and a 4-year-old baby at the house. And that's when we realized we lost everything. And so from there, I got them settled, and Mr. Hedegaard had us meet here at the office at 5 in the morning the next day. And that's when we just started working. One of our board of directors stopped, and he started helping us. And when he started talking to us, he pretty much just said, y'all focus on the work. We'll handle your family life. And when I came in that evening, I had diapers, food, and everything for my baby.
I came in June of 2005, so I was brand new to Singing River. When we got to Pascagoula, it was, like others have said, it was like a bomb went off. Every pole was broken, boats in the middle of the road. It was definitely a surreal experience. I had worked several storms. I was a young lineman at the time. I had worked several storms with a contractor. This was my first ever with Singing River, and I guess it was more personal because working for a contractor, you come in, you get the lights on, and you leave. These people was who we took care of day in and day out. And that was a defining moment for me, is realizing that, hey, we have a responsibility to take care of these people. There was a picture taken I have, was of meters we had pulled off of homes that couldn't get power. That was one of the first things me and him went through and kind of surveyed the situation of who could get power, who couldn't get power. And that picture I have is of meters that we had actually pulled for homes that we knew wasn't getting power back. So we started cutting services loose, things of that magnitude, so when the power was restored, that they would be safe. People that had lost everything, but they were still willing to offer water, or would y'all like a snack? That was something that gave me hope in life, to say, hey, these people's lost everything. I mean, some of them didn't even have clothes. What they had on their back, basically. Everything else was gone.
We went down to what I later determined was the intersection of Washington and Martin Streets. And I'd been there many, many times. I knew it like the back of my hand. When I pull up there, I don't have to look at the street signs. I know where I'm at, because I know the houses that are on the corner. I know the landscaping that's around it. And when I pulled up there, and I've said this before, I describe it like this.
I couldn't have been more lost if you blindfolded me and dropped me into a foreign country, because it was a debris field. The dozers of, I don't know, Corps of Engineers or city or somebody had used equipment and pushed the debris out of the way enough that was, and the debris trails were opened up in a place closely associated with where the streets used to be. And so I'm sitting there in this debris field looking around, and I don't recognize where I am. Somebody tells me that's where I am. They had to tell me I was at that intersection. I should have known that. I've been there hundreds of times before, but I didn't recognize it.
We was assigned to Bendale sub, and Jimmy Glenn Croom, he was the boss, and we just started at the sub and went from there. I knew it'd be a challenge, but we had a good team, good workforce, and had plenty of help coming, so that was a big relief when they got here.
And of course, I got about 4 feet of water in my home, and it kept rising. So I knew, wow, at work, it's going to be bad, So when I finally got here, got assigned to a crew or whatever, and just riding around. Initially, it was a lot to do, but all the transmission line was down, so we was limited on what we can do right at the time. But just riding around and just looking at all the devastation, it was like, wow, we're going to be in for it, People come back to help, even, we go out to help people and whatever. So that let us know that it's like a big brotherhood, and it's like, that feels good when you can, have something like this and people come down, leaving their families and things like that. That's rough. That's tough. That's a tough thing to do. But no, that's I found great joy in that. Like, okay, we got this.
I didn't truly understand the devastation until you were able to get out and really see. Coming into work and hearing Sonia self of the situation that she had to go through, and the fact that her son was trying to, this is what you're going to do, Mom. If I don't make it, you grab this ice chest and you just hold on to it for dear life. And they're addict. DJ having to go pick her up, and she's just weeping and sobbing. But when we actually started getting out and seeing what it had done, I don't think I had words. I really don't. I knew I had a job to do here, but as in all essence, coming into work was a relief. It was a relief. I didn't have to, because at that point, I was actually back in work orders, and Betty and I we were getting the food ready and everything. So it was a complete erasement of what was going on around you. We would work 10 to 12 hour shifts, 6 to 6, 8 to 8, to where there was somebody here constantly. And the realization of what a co-op family is really all about. Because seeing all of these other co-ops come in from so many different places, and the things that the 18-wheelers that they brought in for any of us that had lost anything, you take whatever you need, and I was sitting there going, I don't need that. I may never use it. Jay said, but you may. I didn't want to take anything. I was just happy they were here to help Sonia, to help people who had truly lost. But to sit and watch those lineman trucks come down the road was such a good feeling. And for other co-ops that we would get letters from, and how they felt they had been treated so well, and they were so thankful that they were able to come help us. They were thanking us because we received them so well. So that's when I realized Singing River is my extended family. They truly are my extended family. And when they hurt, I hurt. When they go through devastation, I go through devastation. And when they can't, you can.
One of my primary roles, along with some other employees, was food. And of course that's changed now, but Walmart saw us coming to get all the Little Debbies and all the sandwich meat and all the bread. And we made a good assembly team with the help of some of the employees' wives and some of the board members and friends that would come help us. But it was different than what it is now because we had to prepare breakfast, which started at 3 in the morning, followed by issuing out lunch was our assembly line sandwich and Little Debbies and chips and fruit to the guys that morning. And then we would prepare dinner at night, but we also had to get it distributed in the field. From feeding maybe, 200 employees to 1,000 in a matter of 24 hours. So I remember being here at 3 in the morning to meet Mr. Ware. He helped as a retiree in Sand Hill, and he would come get the breakfast food to carry to Sand Hill and get that going to help start breakfast there. But it was a good employee, spouse, family effort with all of our linemen in mind to try to keep them fed, to keep them going for the sake of our members, to try to restore power as quickly as we could. It was a struggle because we didn't have communications. I know one of my parties was getting funds to help pay for the different contractors that came in. I think we had 75 different mutual aid that came in from 12 different states to help us. But the good news is because of all of our hard work from our employees and documentation that we could provide, we received $22 million back to help pay for that restoration, which if we didn't get that money, we would have to raise our members' rates. And that's something that we try to not do. When you have our employees and their families that had deaths and destruction, and that was heartbreaking because they were trying to work. And I guess the heartfelt change was when people did recognize us to help those employees from funds that came from different parts of the nation. And that just made me know that we're one big happy family, not only locally, but nationwide.
After Katrina had hit and we started getting our assignments, I was assigned to the Sand Hill office with a retired manager, Jack Ware, and I was able to work with him and get some things done up there that were very effective. So I appreciate that time with him. And if you were talking about daunting or a haunting experience, from Loosedale to Sand Hill normally takes you about an hour, and that's when we were up the 2-lane road. And that morning we went up, it was I've never served in a war zone or anything like that, but where you went and you had trees in the road, you had power lines hanging over the road. So it took us a while to get there. We left before daybreak. And by the time we got up there was, the sun was out and everything, but, maneuvering around the low lines in the trees was like, oh my God, what's didn't happen? Because here at the office, you just got wind and rain, We saw a trailer across your yard over there fall over because of the wind, but that's all we got. There was no, we didn't see any trees or anything like that. So by the time we got to Sand Hill, we had saw a lot. When I say the community was very helpful, I would be riding trying to get to a transmission line, and you would have someone pull up and say, hey, you trying to get to that big line back there? I said, yeah, I'm trying to get to that big line. They said, well, go down by Uncle Joe's house, turn behind his house and go. And I'm like, I don't know Uncle Joe, and then they would take you and they would show, if you go through this path, you can come to the, it's a structure down there that you might be looking for. And that was so helpful. Oh my God, that was helpful. The community was helpful. I did as many of those as I could, right-away crew that we had. Daniel, he would follow me when I found something I couldn't handle. He would follow me on his four-wheeler and bigger chainsaw, and we'd go get that off. And it was just, those little things gave you a little bit more hope each day.
I really didn't know what to expect. Of course, none of us did. Working around my house preparing for Katrina, I just remember getting up and watching the weather as I was boarding my windows up on my house to prepare for it. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I knew it was going to be bad. Well, when it really took hold on me that it was bad was when I drove to the Gaucher office, and there was a boat sitting in the middle of Highway 90, the 4-lane highway in Gaucher. And I was like, water came up this far to the Gaucher office. And as we were leaving there, one day we got called to go help a crew in Pascagoula where they kind of got their digger truck in a bind. They were trying to pull a pole that was broke with a bank on it, and it fell over on their digger truck, and we had to go help them get the bank off of their truck. They didn't have another digger. And when we left there, they were working right there at Spinnaker Point Apartments, and there was nothing left of the apartments, nothing but the concrete pilings that the apartments were built on. And I'd been to Spinnaker Point several times and met with them before about different projects working in Goshen, and I was just astounded by the fact that they were gone. It was all gone. And when we left there, I was going through Pascagoula on my way out, following the main road, and as a substation engineer, where the feeds are, and I'm leaving, and I'm looking at a major double circuit leaving Orchard Road substation, and 75% of the poles of the double circuit are laying in the highway. And I was like, my goodness, this is going to be tough. And I took some pictures of that one sign. Originally, it said no power at the end of the street in white letters on a sheet of plywood. And then somebody had come back and put a big red X on it and wrote yes. So then it said yes, power at the end of the street. And I knew we were making a difference when people are putting signs up there to thank you. And we saw one where in front of a place also on Joe Bat Road said, thank you for our work. Van Cleve says thanks is what it said. And those things are memorable.
Before the storm, I was a member service representative. And of course, when Katrina hit, the phone lines went down. So, you do other tasks. You step in and you make lunches, you wash clothes, you do whatever you got to do. But eventually the phone lines did come back up. So, and when they did, it was horrible. The devastation was horrible. I mean, you felt like a counselor. People called you, they cried. They lost family members, their homes, and not only the member services did, our employees did too. So it was hard. We worked 12 hours plus for a month, and it was, at times you got depressed, but then you had to look on the bright side and say, hey, at least I have my home, my family members, so, I mean, people can tell you stories and there's nothing like it. You'll never experience that, and something I don't ever want to experience again. I thought that there would be a little hope is when we started going back to regular schedules. Some of the crews kept, started leaving because we had all the crews here helping us. Lights coming on. That was, people would call you. And like I said before, they called you crying, but they called you crying thanking you too, the people that had their houses back. They didn't have anything, but they had power to clean out their houses, and they had a little hope. So, just their lights coming on gave them more hope than you would ever think.
We're done for preparation a couple of days in advance because it was on the week coming on a Monday, if I'm not mistaken. We started on the week prior getting stuff ready, and then Katrina is the only storm I can remember hitting in the daylight hours, and it was kind of mind blowing to watch all that go on because usually it's at night what we've experienced. But it was pretty interesting to see. A lot of co-ops come in from up on the East Coast to help us, and they started rolling in. But by the time the storm had subsided, they were here, and most of them didn't bring mechanics with them, so we were depending on to take care of their equipment plus ours. So it was pretty overwhelming at times. Second night, I think it was, we were working from about 4 o'clock in the morning until about midnight. Go home, try to get cleaned up, get a nap, back out here at 4 again. The second night, I'm pretty positive it was, I had to go to Citronelle, Alabama and meet a crew that was lost and out of fuel. So I didn't go to bed that night at all. And then it got a little better after that, but as it went along. But they were still long hours. They delivered us some fuel with armed guards because people were trying to stop them on the road and take the fuel. So we had that delivery a couple of times with National Guard and with armed guards. We didn't have any power at the shop, but then we only had the generator at the office. And they figured out a way to backfeed power out there so we could run the fuel pumps and be able to fuel equipment. And that was another challenge, but they got that worked out. Stood at the pump from 4 o'clock till about 8 or 8:30, and then Roger Temple took over. And he done it continuously from then forward.
We had a long discussion and long talk with Ace and several of the bosses that come down. And so anyhow, we started loading up, and they told us where we was going to get started at. Well, I didn't realize that the whole state of Mississippi was out at that time, the whole state, and we didn't have any transmission, which they didn't know when we was going to get transmission. As we started working, we started getting around the town of Gaucher, and within the probably first 4 days, we was picking up poles and picking up the lines and doing stuff, but we weren't ever getting the lights on. So at the beginning, they told us it was liable to be up to a month, 3 months before we get a transmission line. Just speculative. They didn't know. So that's kind of a kick in the rear as a lineman, trying to get you doing all this work and you never get any lights, actually gratifying you to get lights on. So and we always joke and play around. I mean, if you're serious all the time, that's what makes this job fun to do anyhow. That's what's made it fun for all the years that we've done it. Yeah, we'd sit down and stop. I mean, you had to laugh to keep from crying, because I mean, it was bad, but the gratifying thing is that everybody was in the same situation. We'd pull up to people's places and they'd come out there just like normal and wanted to know when's the lights gonna come on, and then they realized that like, it really don't matter. We don't have nothing to feed anyhow. We don't even have a meter pole, or the house is gone. They were just coming out there to ask us if we needed anything, and it was just the usual thing they done. Which, not just the people that lived here, there's also a bunch of employees that their houses were flooded, and they made it into work. So that said a lot for the people who actually work here.
So I was an MSR during the time of Hurricane Katrina, and they placed me on the food team, which was exactly where I wanted to be. I love cooking. I love helping people. I love preparing meals, and just, the excitement of someone eating something good. And I enjoyed that. And I was glad that they put me on there during the time. And so we got in the kitchen, we prepared the meals, we boxed them up. The cruise was coming in, even some of the guys were having to deliver them, to the outside people that couldn't come in. It was very rewarding during that time. The turning point for me that gave a glimpse of hope was just hearing and seeing people being restored with their power. And you knew in time that we would all be back to normal again.
I went to my home first because it was on the way to the office, me and my fiance. I had right at 8 foot of water in my home, so there was no use of doing nothing. I just remember giving her my checkbook and telling her to go as far as north as she could and get us a camper. And she took me to the office. I said, "That just give me to Singing River, I won't need my truck." And I didn't see her probably for about close to 2 weeks, because we slept on the floor at the office. We were somewhere between Escatawba and Moss Point. They sent us in a little subdivision had a couple broke poles in there, because we could get a bunch of lights on by fixing them poles. So we went in there, and me and Wayne Mallon and my crew, we got to this house that had a broke 30, and we knew the primary was on. Said, let's fix this broke 30 and put the service up. And we could hear a generator running. So we're gonna walk and find where the generator's at, so we won't get nothing back from the generator. We walked around the house, we looked, and Wayne's like, that generator's in this house. And we looked through there, and there was people asleep laying in there. So I remember Wayne yelling, "We got to get in here." And me and him, he busted the door open. We went in there, and they was almost dead, all 4 of them, from a carbon dioxide poisoning. And
we got called for the crew, and y'all come help us. We got to get them out. It was so bad in there, we couldn't hardly breathe. So we're opening doors and we're dragging these people out to get fresh air. And we called 911 because they was breathing. They had a pulse and breathing, but they was taking a breath about every couple of seconds, so barely breathing. I guess after about, I'd say a week, we woke up one morning to eat breakfast at their Gaucher office. And I looked out there, and as far as you could see was linemen, bucket trucks, from all, I mean, it was literally hundreds and hundreds of men. As far as you could see, bucket trucks, digger trucks. And I'm like, finally, we got some help.
These hundreds and thousands of people, they were kind of sitting on G, waiting on O to come. And then these people just started pouring in, you know, from all over the country. I remember there being people from Kansas and I want to say North Dakota, Virginia, Florida, Texas, just all over, and you know, all co-op people. And so that was impressive. How we got that many people in that little old Gaucher office, you know, and fed them and got them through the line. But it was cool because, and you know, they were all co-op people. So it was almost like it was just a normal work day, but several hundred more people than normally exist. But like the spirit that exists about what, you know, what a co-op is and sort of how everybody sort of just, and I think where you really saw it for me is like, and I've said this a couple times, you never wanted to quit because you knew like there was no, like a lot of people, there was no hope. They literally were living in their driveway because FEMA ain't come in with FEMA trailers at this point. You're like in a tent in a cot in their driveway because their house is gone, you know, or they're, you know, in there working middle of the night trying to get their, you know, what they have kind of gathered or whatever. So you never wanted to leave. I feel like Singing River Management did a good job, you know, Ace, and is what I saw in Gaucher, and then, you know, obviously Lee did up here, but just managing all that was pretty remarkable.
The best way I can describe how we felt after Hurricane Katrina, actually during Hurricane Katrina, was overwhelming. Not knowing when employees were going to show up. We had scheduling, you know, to do, but you had to know who was going to be able to be there. There was a skeleton crew that spent the night overnight and heard all the bad weather. So the best way I can describe it would be that it was overwhelming. The moment I knew everything was going to be okay is when our employees started arriving in and you knew your family and stuff was safe. There was one particular employee that came in one day, probably 2 days after, and we weren't able to get in touch with her. We knew there was devastation in her area. And when she came in that morning and walked in there, it was just looking at her. She was beat down. You know, she was exhausted, but she was happy to be alive. So I knew everything was going to be okay in time.
But one of the biggest things in Leetsville, of course, is the prison was there, and I had constant contact with Mr. Dobbins at the time, who was running the prison. He called continuously because it was out for 4 days. But that was the area, and Willie Wilson was my counterpart for the state line area. For those that hadn't seen the area from Leetsville to state line is many a mile, so I could rarely get to the state line because Leetsville was so big. So I stayed around the Leetsville and I kind of contact Willie Wilson for the state line side. And then we was able to get the lines to the prison. We actually had 2 routes that we could feed the prison back before transmission came. So once we finally got transmission on day 4, we was able to make the prison hot. And they was just about to start shipping inmates. Because he kept calling me, how much longer, how much longer? I said, man, I can't tell you. It's not us, it's transmission. And but it's like right at the breaking point where he was about to do something, we got power back onto the prison. But every evening, you know, I probably was running 30 or 40 men there in the middle when it was real bad. You know, my job was try to keep them safe ultimately. But, you know, I'd run a line out and make sure y'all stay on this line, you get another group on a line, and they go that way. Then at the end of the day, I kind of see how far they got, and I'd had to drive all the way back to Lucedale to get with the dispatch and tell them, all right, we got this much on today, this much on today. We wouldn't call in every time we turn something on because there was so much out that traffic would have been too much. I think the hardest part was working 4 continuous days and not seeing one light bulb turn on. We're all about getting the lights on and getting them on fast, and that's when the people just cheer you on, and for 4 solid days, you just busted it and nothing come on. But when we finally got the okay that, hey, transmission's coming, you start turning them lights on, then kind of gave everybody a boost to, all right, now let's kick it in another level, because now we're starting to turn lights on. But then it came a point where we were turning them on a little fast, and some of the transmission wasn't on yet, so we was about to overload the transmission, so we had to actually slow down. So that was another downward spiral for a few, but that probably lasted a day or 2 where we couldn't turn on a lot of load. And then once we got the okay the second time, that kind of picked us back up to the end.
I was working with David Grantham and Shannon Boykin. We was on a crew together. We was in Escatawba was where we started at. And then after we went to Escatawba and completed there, they got to start working on some underground. We went to St. Andrews and St. Martin and restored a lot there. And people was just happy to see us. I mean, they had lost everything. And just to have a light going. I mean, and some of them, they didn't have nothing but a slab, but they were just proud to see us and have some kind of ray of hope. My wife and kids, I got them to stay in Tampa with my mother-in-law and father-in-law. That way I wouldn't have to worry about having to take care of them, getting gas, whatever else for a generator and all that stuff. So that made my job a lot easier, because we stayed at the Gaucher office probably for at least 2 weeks, I know, before I come home. We would go through and look at all the transformers and get them hot to the transformers, and if we had to, we'd pull out the individual services going to the houses. So if they couldn't take power, we would pull it out so they wouldn't have no power on it, no backfeed, no nothing like that. I mean, people, they were glad to see you. I mean, they'd be like, hey, you need something to drink, you need something to eat, You get to see them in the downtime, and you feel like, I mean, they look up to you as some kind of hero then, and then when you get all that work done, and at the end of the night, we'd ride around and make sure everybody's lights come back on, and we called it like a victory lap, and people just was, oh, thank you so much, and we love Singing River, and thank y'all for all y'all's hard work and long hours, and it made you feel good like you had accomplished something.
I started on September the 2nd, 2005. It was 4 days after Katrina. I was working with Pike Electric, and my hire date was actually the next week, but Lee called needing more people, so he asked me could I come to work. So anyway, I showed up on September the 2nd and was assigned to William Skagg's crew, and we were around Sunplex, and it was like everywhere else down there. It was tore up pretty bad. It was pretty eye-opening about how bad things were. It was helpful to kind of have blinders put on and just, focus on the job at hand, getting that first step done, then worry about the next step, then the next step. We kind of worked in that area and kind of went south of there a little bit, kind of on the other side of 90. And that's where I was blown away about how bad things actually were. And it was pretty saddening, that those people lost everything. It was probably, 6 or 7 days after the storm, which had been about my 3rd or 4th day here. People started putting up plywood, pieces of plywood by the road, thanking the first responders and all that, and then they were thanking the linemen for the work we were doing. And I mean, people was telling us thank you, and they didn't even have a house to live in. So that, and putting American flags everywhere you looked. I mean, it's like, you know, we're American people. We're tough. We're resilient, and we're going to build back.
Right after the storm, nobody really knew how bad. We knew the storm was bad, but nobody had the bad. Lee made us. We got this circuit on, or got it where it could be turned on out to Walmart. That way, Walmart could come on and the gas station. So everybody didn't really go nowhere. They just got that on, and the next day. But it took us a half a day to get to the sub because we had to cut our way to it because there was so many trees down. You just start at the sub. You just had to pick a circuit. There was only 2 of us or 3 of us, so we just picked a circuit, and all we had was a digger derrick. So it was me and Eddie and digger derrick and James Miller in a pickup, and we went from there and just started working until we got help. So you can only do so much, just so many men when it's messed up that much. One crew, though, I was trying to think where they were from. I cannot remember, but they swapped out. So they were here a long time, but I didn't know how long all of them stayed. Because some crews stayed longer than others because there was lots of camps and stuff that we bypassed because nobody lives with them. We just come back. So we didn't send all of them home at once. They stayed around to help us get it back on. There's no doubt it makes you feel better when you start seeing lights come on. That does give you an extra, hey, we kind of see the end in it now. Like, we're seeing lights come on. You felt sorry for a lot of people because some of their homes had trees go through them, and they didn't have nothing. And some of them lived in cars and stuff. Didn't have because all hotels were full from all over. A lot of hotels didn't have power and stuff, so a lot of people lived in their cars. So that was kind of rough to see somebody, and then you couldn't help them because they had trees through their houses.
Most of the stuff that I did was actually right on the coast where the hurricane surge went through. And so there's a lot of destruction there. And I was working mostly with Brian Goldman. And we worked together, and we worked on underground outages and trying to make everything hot again so people could have, for their campers and stuff like that, can have power to it. And what made the situation so bad was there was a heat wave came the next day after Katrina hit, and it was bad. I mean, it got really hot, and we were working 14, 16-hour days every day.
I was a member service representative during Katrina, and answering the phone calls. It took a while for us to actually get phones back, but once we did, had a lot of people call in. I mean, they couldn't get power at that time, but they wanted someone to talk to because of the devastation. So I felt like a counselor. I would just listen and then cry after we got off the phone because, it was upsetting to know that someone went through that. It's just awesome to see how Singing River worked together as a family and helped one another. So that was really, I realized how fortunate I was to work here because we are like a family.
One of the great things about being a lineman is you get to see the faces of those same faces that you saw that didn't have power and were hopeless. And I use this analogy, that first light bulb that comes on is a tiny light, but it's a huge ray of hope in people's lives when they don't have any hope. And we get to see that, and that's a wonderful thing. We enjoy that. Most linemen will tell you it's one of the great things about being a lineman. It's one of the great things about going to do storm work, restoring power. The situation's still the same, but the glass looks half full now instead of half empty for some reason, and that is a wonderful thing. So, and that fuels us to keep going. And difficult, yes. Long hours, yes. Sleeping on the floor at the office, yes. Eating whatever you can get, and everybody trying to do their best they can to get you food. Sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's late, sometimes it's too early and you don't even want food, but you just eat when you can, you sleep when you can, and you do all the work that you can. And at the end of it, you hope that you're making enough of a difference that eventually you keep chipping away until you get this whole thing done. And everybody who can take power has power back. We can't fix everything, but if we can fix that, and that's kind of our motivation. It was then.